is all I want.
Okay. Let's check quick. How things are going. Let's see if you can hear me. Looks like it's frozen on Twitch. Oh gosh, let's see. It looks like it's frozen on Twitch. I'm gonna check it. Let's try reloading. Let's hear how the audio is. Maybe it does that. I don't know if it just looks frozen, even when it's not. Oh, I'm gonna check it on my phone. That's probably a better way. That's probably better. That's probably better. Oh, that sounds great. Okay. We're up. Gosh, you can really burn a minute quickly. Okay, so the title is worth an explanation, but you guys are going to get a different one first. Basically, I wanted to make a different video, and I wasn't going to make it today, but my computer's bugging, and so I'm supposed to be editing. I'm going to edit tomorrow. I'm waiting for a couple more assets to come through. So I have a free day, and I had these thoughts and these feelings really kind of heavy on me, and they were definitely on my mind, and so I want to express them. I was going to name this video Preamble, and I was going to kind of set out what it is I want to say, because the next video is going to be my big video, or the next stream. One of the largest topics in my life, which is centered around, I don't know if you would call it religion or me, it's funny to even say it this way, but leaving Christianity. I was going to name it why I'm no longer a Christian, or why I left religion, or whatever. And I was going to, be super, when you feel like you have to buck something and you kind of overdo it. So I was going to say fuck a bunch, and I was going to tell my whole story, but I was going to kind of explain in depth. And it was like something that I really wanted to say and get out there and be in the open. But at the same time, I wanted to be tender with it, because almost all of my family, my friends, and most people that know me are Christians, are religious, believe in a certain just way of thinking, and they all think that I do, and they all think that I think they feel that we're all in a collective reality together, and then they don't understand exactly why I am the way that I am, or why I do the things that I do. And it's for this reason. And I think that without getting too much into it, I want to get into it, but not to start. I'll leave some breadcrumbs though. It's not for the normal reasons. It's not that I have left the faith, or no longer believe in God, or don't believe in the teachings of Jesus, or don't believe the Bible. And it's also not some pseudo, basically another denomination. I'm not trying to lay out my thoughts or get liturgical or whatever. I don't have different theological my hat to throw in the ring. It's really, I've always wanted to be the most genuine thing I could be, and so I genuinely was a Christian. I genuinely did believe everything, and through believing it more and more, I guess I reached these levels where my belief in it was what pulled me out of it, because it was the act of me believing it, the act of me putting my faith in it, the act of me putting my trust in it, and deciding to live my life for it, that ultimately led me to a crossroads, or a bridge, or just a portal. I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but led me to a place where I could no longer, what I was following, what I was seeing as true, no longer overlapped with Christianity. It became something different. So I want to talk about that, what that is, what I believe true. I don't even want to say true Christianity is. I think we're meant to do life without religion. and I think that all religion is false. And so I want to explain how I came to that, why I feel that way. And again, I want to be ginger or tender about this subject and with my statements, because as much as I want to be at a place where what I feel and what I need to say is true can just come out of me, and I don't have to parse out my words. And I really value freedom. That means being able to say like what you want to say. And so it sometimes is a struggle for me to put forth the effort to explain my thoughts. Just I want people to take them as they are, and just if you don't understand me, you're never going to kind of energy. But lately, I've been sitting with more things and describing them to my friends in a way that they can understand them, and it's almost like if I'm willing to put in the effort to try and be understood, people are matching me with more understanding than I expected. So I feel that at the very least I need to put forth that effort. And it's more, I guess, maturity from me than in previous times where I've just said, no matter what way I say it, they're not going to get it, and so I'm not even going to try. That was kind of stupid of me. I assumed there wouldn't be connection. And maybe not stupid, maybe just scared. I don't know. So yeah, let's go over all the things I wanted to talk about in my preamble. Oh, I'm not going to reference my notes. Basically, so there is this thing which is, I came across this TikTok, and they were talking about how there is a certain frequency or energy that is correlated with becoming famous, or breaking out of the mold, getting a bunch of money, whatever it is, kind of coming out of your box, out of the system like you've been in, but like where there's a really big draw to energy and money and people and ideas, all this stuff. And what this frequency is a high level of internal resonance. So that means that what you think and what you feel and what you believe and what you say is true. Like basically what comes out of you is the same as what's going on inside. And it's interesting to think about it this way, but at whatever level of emotional clarity you reach, if you are mind, will, emotions, everything I think is everything I feel is everything I do, that is going to inspire others, because we're all looking for a state of internal cohesion. And so if your internal sense and your external sense is cohesive, basically there's this weird thing in which we are all starting at a certain point, and then we're ever changing and growing throughout our whole lives. So we never actually arrive at an end point. But what internal cohesion is basically you get yourself to an end point while you're still on the journey. But that end point becomes an idea or a belief system, or you could say a religion. And the only thing that other people can, I guess, be drawn to is a fixed point. You can listen to people, you can converse with them as they're kind of floating and changing their opinions or feelings on things. But once somebody's a fixed point, then it's positive or negative. Then you can either choose to agree with them or you can disagree. And so when people get famous, it's that they have reached a fixed point. And whether that's, I'm a Christian conservative who cares about this and this and this, and my background is this, and I'm interested in that. You reach that point, and everybody that's like you will, be attracted to you, and everyone that's not will flee from you. And it's kind of the same no matter what it is that you stand for. You become a belief, or you become a idea, or a champion of that thing, of that fixed point, even though you're not a fixed point. But you channel through yourself a fixed point of being. And so that's what a pastor is, or that's what a podcaster is. Like anybody who chooses a fixed point of reality to stay in, they're going to be attracting and denying, because that's the important thing. There's like the idea of duality, but it's because of polarity. It's because of everything is gendered, or I should say that the two human genders are a picture of everything. The same way there's just night and day. And it's all based off of the laws of polarity. So that means that energy is cycled in and out. And so that's how energetic currents run. That's what we are. We're made of energy. And so the most energy possible is both collecting what you want and pushing away what you don't want. And that's why if you clean out your bedroom, clean out your house, if you sell something, if you get rid of all of your clothes, from a certain era of your life, or if you jump into something new, you buy new books to read, you drive a new car, any of that, either the recognition of something and the walking towards it, or the pulling back and the throwing away, help you achieve that clarity and help you achieve that energy, help you achieve a high energetic state. And fame, frequency, energy, whatever it is high internal resonance, high internal cohesion, because again, you've gotten to a point of, this is where I'm actually at, and I'm not lying about it, and I'm not faking it, and I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm just sitting in what I am. And I think it's important to reach those points. I think I've been looking at fame or my journey, or if you can't tell what I'm saying all this, I want to be famous. It's not that I want cars or clothes, or I don't want to go to the parties. I don't care about all that stuff. I want to have something worth standing for, and something worth bringing to the whole of humanity, and to be able to bring it. And before this, I had seen the artifacts of a famous person's life, heard all these stories and listened to all these documentaries and podcasts, and been like, that's the thing. People tend to get famous right after they step out and they're weird, or they're fully themselves, or whatever it is. I need a season like that. And I thought it was just you had to kind of act out, and that would nudge you away. You had to step out from the crowd. You had to be different, and those things are true. But I think we're seeing that different for the sake of different, or just being crazy in public, being crazy on social media, whatever it is, doing something wild and just out of the norm. It does get you visibility, but it doesn't get you personality and like a draw. It doesn't have that energy behind it. It has like you hear somebody screaming, you turn around. It's like, that's how I think a lot of social media stars are right now. What it actually is that people achieve this high level of internal coherence, and because they're actually caught up with who they are and where they're at that moment, they're not in a state of becoming, they're in a state of you are. And so you end up being pushed towards things that do look different. It does stand out from the norm, but you're doing it not in a way to just grab eyes and grab attention. You're doing it in a way to show who you fully are, to live that out. And it's a natural outgrowth, because all you can be is all you are. And it's made sense for me because I have had a really hard time finding that state of internal cohesion. It hasn't been on my radar until last week, but within that frame, I've probably been one of the most internally not cohesive people that I know. Vibe, not actually, but borderline schizophrenic, borderline, bipolar, not actually, but man, these things inside of me, what I think actually, and how I act on the outside, or how I feel, or what I let people know about me, are so far apart. And sometimes it feels like God did it to me, and we can talk about that more later, but sometimes it feels like I was forced to find out things, or to live life and be taught lessons that I couldn't justify with living in the normal world, or with living a life that anybody could understand or relate to, or take into their reality. And so I'm how do I justify these 2 points of being, these points of consciousness? How do I be who I truly am, say what I feel, and still be in any relationship, or be in a room with my family, my wife's family? How can I have a relationship and connection and still think what I think, and still believe what I believe, and still live the life, live who I am? And I know this kind of sounds, it's funny, I'm saying a lot of things I feel like people say when they come out. It's this weird thing where it almost feels worth it to have community, even if you're misunderstood. But then at the same point, that's not worth it. And so I guess what this video is, this was going to be the preamble. But I was going to let you guys know that I had decided to, say, fuck it. I'm going to be internally like clear and get closer to that point of internal cohesion. I think that's what streaming is going to help me do. And even if I don't resonate with, or if I have to, lose connection over it, that's kind of what I have to do. It reminds me of that Bible verse where Jesus says that if you lose fathers or mothers or brothers or sons or friends for my name, that it'll come back to you, and it's worth it to follow the path. And I think that it is worth it. And I guess, I reference God in scripture and Christian things all the time, and it's probably weird to be like, well, you're not a Christian, but that seems to be your whole basis for reality. Like I said in my last stream, I think the Bible is a lens on reality, and so it speaks to everything that is true, but looking through something with glasses that are clear doesn't necessarily mean, like, you don't need the glasses. You could see life anyways. But it's a better frame to look through than, like, clouded glasses. So, yeah, I think, just to put a very final point on that, I'm looking for internal cohesion, not just so I can be famous, but because I think internal cohesion is a really good thing to have. And if it ends in me being able to stand for something and become a point and a fixed reality, like to become an idea, in a sense, that's me agreeing to being seen and agreeing to being used in a way, used by God, used by collective humanity. I guess I think that we kind of have to transform from waves into lines or into points in order to be resonated with. And then, I hope that whatever I get to, whatever I resonate with over the next few years, I can pull people to me over that, like that fixed point of, this is the best that we figure out so far of how to live or something. Then I want people to go past me. And I don't intend to stay there. I intend to galvanize and then also move past it as well. But I think that there is something in me which is needing to be set in this time, and needing to know what life looks like as at a set down place. It's been a long time coming. I'm 26, and I don't think my internal world has felt settled, or like it's been in a constant place of motion since, like I said, these experiences that have forced me to see the world from the outside. And I think my internal world hasn't been settled since I was 8 years old. And that probably will be the video that I make next after this one is my story. We'll see. There might be other things. Whenever I do that, that'll be a long one, because it's not just what's happened to me. I guess it feeds into everything I believe, but also it's now I've realized it's how I felt about what happened to me, what I lived through, and it's not just the facts. And I used to be able to talk about the facts really easily, but now I think I'm ready to talk about the feelings, which is a lot harder for me to do. Sorry, my hair just looks busted. I don't really know. I always feel like I look weird in hoods, but I think about my own face probably way too much. I don't think it really matters. Yeah, let's start. So, I was listening to this song when I got on stream. It was just before this. I hadn't heard it before, but it was Adrienne Lenker, Real House. Really beautiful song. I'd heard a couple of hers before, but it reminds me of this feeling of being a child, and that feels like a really long time ago for me. It feels really far away. And I think this idea of being a child and being like God or close to God are, intertwined, and I can talk more about that. But where I want to start from is who we are as humans, what we're trying to do, and how do we do that? How do we get there? And what is it that we need to be actuating in our daily lives? What's real? And I had this time when I was in my earliest early 20s, I guess, 21, 22. And I would encounter these people, and let's say, so I was in the videography industry for a long time. I still am, because I like making videos. I want to be a filmmaker as well. I am a filmmaker. I make films. But we do these projects, and people would kind of put their whole, who they wanted to be, their personality, what they wanted other people to perceive them as. They would put that into what we were doing. And so it'd be like, this needs to be the best. This needs to look great. We got to deliver higher quality than we ever have on this and this and this. And I'd be like, yep, yeah, for sure, we should do that. I really want to, make this that good for you. Let's work hard. Let's do it. And we'd do it, and it'd be like a 2-3 month process or whatever. We'd deliver the video. It'd be good. The person would love it. And then the next video would come up, and they would say, okay, we need to do this. We need to level up even more, whatever. And it broke this thing for me where I realized that some people are repeating the same thing, the same thought in their head, that if I just do more of this, or this just looks better, or I'm more recognized for that, then something. And it kind of broke my brain a little bit, because then I started seeing it in other industries and other patterns and ways that people are. And I realized that there's not that much going on. There's not that much happening in the world. It can feel like things are changing and industries are emerging and things are being invented and people are putting out, creative work and all this stuff. Like, not that much is actually happening if a ton of that is just people stuck on the same thought and people kind of in their own way just trying the same thing over and over and over again to see if they can move past what they're stuck in. And I'm going to take it really philosophical quick, but I think that may be all that is really going on. Is we're children, we're introduced to the world, we're pure. Blockages come in our way of, you can picture like sunshine. The sun is always beaming down, and if there's posts standing in the way, you lose that ray of light. And as kids, we just start to lose these rays of light until we feel like we're in a dark room, and maybe there's just one ray of light, peeking through. So we follow that. And following that usually helps us take out the rest of these reeds to get closer to the light, to the sun, to love. I'm going to use light and shadow as an example of love and chaos or despair. And what I feel like is growing up is just settling for the amount of light and shadow that are in your life. So you feel like you can balance it. You feel like this is enough light where if everything else is shadow, I'm fine. That's where people find security. They may be anxious. They may be like this and this and this. These aspects of love that I want to exist just don't, relationships don't work for me, or I just am not close with my family, or there's just the way the world is. We just have to be scared. Whatever the things they settle on and tell themselves, they're essentially just agreeing to not ever removing those reeds and to just sticking with the amount of light that they have. And two things on that. I think one, I think that I had so much close in on me really early that I was like, there's got to be more light than this. No way am I depressed as like an 11-year-old. No way is this as dark as the world is. And on the other side of that, then there's also this thing that even when we settle or we agree to the amount of light and shadow that are in our lives, we still, without knowing it, crave more light, and we still approach more light as much as we can and in as many ways as possible. And so what we end up doing is we may settle and we may say, this is as good as I'm going to get in life. This is the amount of love or light that I'm going to let in. And this other amount is how much darkness that we just are going to agree that the world is. And we start to make that true. We start to, whatever we believe, we put on our kids. And so, I want to talk about this more too, but basically, we start to actuate the world that we believe exists. And if the majority of the world believes that, there's this much light and the rest is dark, we're going to have a world that's as dark as that and as light as that. And it's going to be it's a high contrast world. And in actuality, there exists this gradient of people on their way to more and more light. But I believe that what you realize at a certain point is that the whole world is light and the darkness is just an illusion. And actually, if we were to live in actuality with what's true and what's real, with base reality, like I talked about in my last video, my last stream, that we would be able to take off every single thing that blocks the sunlight from us, that blocks love from us, and that would be returning us to being a child, to childlike faith, to bliss, to purity, to innocence. And so basically, I want to explain who we are to start. So the way I want to do this is I want you to introduce yourself to me, but stop before you say your name. And you can do it in your head. And you'd go, I am. I said, whoa, stop right there. You did it. You're great. You're perfect. You are. And in the Bible, you can talk about all the different names of God, etymology, what it breaks down to, but the closest we have to the name of God is Yahweh, which is just breath in, breath out. Yah. Like that. So Yahweh is your breath, the thing that sustains you. And I think even if you're not a Christian and you don't believe in the God of the Bible, if you believe that God is your breath, it's well, you can say that you don't think that God exists, but if nothing exists that allows you to breathe, then you don't exist. So something exists. And I think to this general point, there's no such thing as an atheist. I think that atheists are just anti-Christians. They're people that are raised in a Christian worldview, and then they're all this is, the base of reality is true, morality, all this stuff that could be extrapolated from Christianity is true, but just take God out of it, and then I'll take that package. And what ends up being true for you then God becomes kind of a collective ego rather than collective consciousness. And I can get more into the depths and the details, and I think I owe an explanation to everybody about that. But man, there's so many points. There's so much to say. But I think I just stick with the truth. So you are God. You are not a I am. You are the I am. You are I am. I am felt presence in here. And I used to be scared to say this. I thought I was the first one bringing it to the world. But now I've been seeing all these TikToks and people talking about it, and people out there know, and that's great. That's amazing. Feels like letting a genie out of the bottle or something. But essentially, I was had somebody tell this to me back in November, and I was already kind of on the cusp of where I basically internally referred to myself as I'm the same as God. I'm if His Spirit is in me, or the thing that's animating me and bringing me to life, then I am Him, just like my son is me. Separate, different droplets, but still water, And I think my journey through Christianity is just that you can't convince me that I'm a different type of water than what God, proper is in their rendition of it. But if I am what Jesus is, and Jesus is what God is, then I am what God is. It's just finish the equation. But what Christians, they get to this weird point where they're human, which is created by God, like a son of God, but they're lesser than Jesus, but they're trying to get to Jesus, and when they're fully to Jesus, they'd be like Him, and then they'd be like God, but they can't get there before they die. But after they die, they're just going to be judged based off of how close they got to Jesus in life. So either way, they're never quite like God. Just the best you can do is to sit next to Him and basically be His buddy. And that's not how I think about life. I'm using very not correct theological verbiage, but that's basically what it is. And I don't know, maybe I should explain, if you're a new viewer, somebody who doesn't know me. I think I always get in my head about who I know that may hear this and what they would think, and everybody I know knows a lot of theology, and so many people are pastors or work in churches or just believe their whole life and they study the Bible, and so I feel like there's that basis. But I grew up in church. I got saved when I was 5 years old. I read the Bible multiple times for interest. I watched every sermon, read every book I could get my hand on, listened to podcasts, went to church. And a lot of people will say I did it all and I never felt close to God. No, I I found God in each one of those things. I found him, in the Holy Spirit. Like I got filled with the Holy Spirit, and I read these books on that, and I have lived day-to-day life reading the Bible, praying, meditating, and finding the Spirit of God in me. And I went to church 3, 4, 5 days a week most of the time, partially because I was singing there, and then was on the worship teams, but then also because I went, and I ate up everything I could get. I have been to multiple churches and found different, truths there and all this stuff. And I think that it's important for people to know that I didn't just breeze through it and be like, nope, not for me. I've waded through it every year of my life, completely believing it's true and then just looking for deeper levels of truth in it. And there's this gulf where if you take what most Christians think life is about, and this might be more evangelical or non-denominational, but it's God's here. He sent his son Jesus to die for us, to be an intermediary. We are supposed to accept Jesus so we can go, into God, be a part of his kingdom. And they think that to be a part of his kingdom, you basically have to be without sin, because Jesus said that you can't enter the kingdom without sin, right? Unless you're without sin. So they think my habits, my bad desires, my identity that's wrong, my ego, all this stuff needs to be done away with in order for me to enter heaven, to be with God up here. And they're right, but they're wrong, because they read the Bible literally and not spiritually. And it is both, but it's the spiritual is to the physical what the spiritual read of the Bible is to the physical read of the Bible, which is there's way more going on that we can't perceive in the real world, in physical reality. And there's also way more going on in the spiritual read of the Bible than the physical, just the words on the page. And basically, everything in the Bible is true. I say true because it points to truth, but it's also a lie in the sense that if you don't understand it, the true point of it, if you're not viewing it from the right perspective, then everything will just appear to you as a physical workbook for life. And if you live according to what you think the Bible's saying, you will get most of life wrong. And I think that's a revelation that's taken me a long time to sit with, because I used to think if you believe the Bible's true and that works for you and it makes you a good, nice person, that's good for you, and you'll live a happy life, and that's what I want for most people. So you do that. I'm somehow cursed with this extra knowledge now, so I can't be happy. I have to keep finding out what's going on this deeper level of truth. But kind of if they got into the porch, at least they're in a warm house, they're not out in the elements, that's good for them. And I just feel that I'm in the house. But now I'm at a point where I feel compassion and frustration that they won't live the best life possible if they stay in the porch. Everybody should be invited all the way into the house. And the worst thing is that they're keeping themselves on the porch. And so I want to invite them in and let them know that it's all for them, and that it's not just because you get in partly doesn't mean that you can't get in the whole way. And basically, I feel like nobody believes me because they all really are holding on to their idea of religion and their ideas of God and their beliefs in him. And what I want to let people know is that they are holding on to an idea of God because, just like we talked about in Base Reality in the last stream, we may all be talking about God, but we are speaking on different things. And we may think that I'm talking about the same thing. I'm talking about that, that feeling you get in church, or that kindness when a neighbor gives you something, bakes you cookies, or that feeling of oh man, I think that woman's really the right person, or, the feeling when you see your child for the first time, or whatever, all these things that we're God was in that. That's God to me, that you feel that too. Okay, yeah. So all of us can resonate with this thing of that's God. And they're right, but they think that anything that they've experienced of God is all that God is. And basically, we say that he's this ever-expansive, more than we can think about or imagine or control or understand. But at the same time, we go around life thinking that we have this chokehold on reality of, no, but I do understand all the important stuff. I understand enough to act, I think would be how most people, that's I think what most people in Christianity are looking for, is enough understanding of God, enough of a strangle on a grip on reality, a grip on life, a grip on what all this really means and is about in order to keep moving forward. And what it ends up being is enough to have an excuse to stay doing the same things you're already doing. It's a part of the sin structure, the sin model, or I'm sorry, but like if you think in terms of good and evil, good and bad, sin and not sin, you're not with God. And the reason is because, and Jesus said all of this, but it's people have, a veil over their eyes. They can't see it because they don't know that they're God. And if you know that you're God first, then everything just clicks into place. But if you don't, then, and you can't accept that, it's hard to hear and to take in and to believe. And so you'll make conclusions of, the Bible or even reality or what's happened in your life in order to prove that you're not God. But I got to this really weird place of trying to prove that I wasn't God. And it was actually harder than proving that I am God. And so I just had to enter this reality of, oh shoot, I'm God. And basically, if it comes down to worthiness or unworthiness, I couldn't be God, I've done this thing wrong, or whatever. As long as you're looking at sin, then nobody's God and nobody's ever going to be God. And so you end up in this weird huddle of, sorry God, we sinned, I'm sorry we did this wrong. And if you think about it like children, like if my kids all got in a huddle and wouldn't talk to me because they're so scared of me because they think that they sinned and got something wrong, and the only way that they relate to each other is their fear of me, like, screw that, they're my kids, I want to be close to them. But I would be disallowed from being engaged in my kids' lives if they wouldn't interact with me, if they wouldn't play with me, if they wouldn't seek me, if they wouldn't see me as a father, if they wouldn't ask for my help, if they wouldn't run to me, all this stuff. And so when I go to most churches, I see a bunch of people huddled around a book trying to figure out who God is, and I'm like, he's standing right there, or he's standing right here, he's in you, he's in each of you. And not just like, Jesus is in my heart, whatever. It's like, no, like, you wouldn't be here if you weren't God. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't the I am. So, we were talking about Yahweh, just the breath. That's like the name of God. But the reality of who God is he says to Moses, like, I am that I am. He's saying, I am, that one, the one that's in you, the one that has this desire, that this burning bush that won't go away, this eternal flame, so to speak, the spirit living in you, the thing that's right to do, that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, even though you're out here in the wilderness watching sheep for, I don't know, what's it, like 40 years? That I am. I'm that one. That's, the intelligence of the universe, the monad, we talked about this in the last video too, but if God is everything, or he created everything, then all the intelligence, if we think about it in terms of data or energy, all of the everything that exists and the ability to view and understand everything that exists, if we listed it all as intelligence, as files, God would have the hard drive. He would be everything. He would be the mind that could comprehend everything that ever has been or everything that will be. And so that's what the Greeks labeled as the monad, the central intelligence, all intelligence in one thing. And so I'm sure people are asking, like, well, if you're God, then you're all the intelligence in the entire universe. Doesn't seem like it. It seems like you, like, this or that. And they poke at my life, or would poke fun at anybody's life who tries to stand up and say that they're God. But the proof in your life is not like, if you're God, you'll be rich and famous and you'll be rewarded and all these things. Because it's not about good and evil. It's, we're all God. We all have access to the center of intelligence to the degree that we allow it to enter into our lives and to live from it. So I've made moves, I've done things, I've met people, I've lived in a way, sometimes with my hands off the wheel, where I'm like, I didn't do that, that was God, and I think everybody has experiences like that. And basically, if you have access to it, then you are it, because you can become it. You can fully live life that way. If you can do it a little bit, you can do it a lot. And so if you even have one iota of an ability to allow God to access and enter your life, Paul talks about that in that one verse, letting your whole body be filled with light, beholding, perceiving God. What that means is, like, he literally says looking in a mirror. It's like looking in the mirror until you realize that you're God, and your whole body will be filled with light, because you'll realize, I can take light into my entire body. I don't have to only live, we talked about this too, the light and shadow. I don't have to only live with like a light core here and then everything else is black. That's how most people view it. It's like, my body, my hands are death and sin, and like, I'm evil. I'm this black, shroud, but I have a little light here where Jesus is in my heart. And it's like, your body, your mind, both of those, you're picturing and viewing and living life as if You're 90% darkness and 10% light. And that's the world that you're creating. That's the life that you're creating for yourself, for the people around you. I have to believe that I'm 100% light in order to execute 100% light on the outside. And I have to think that I can be 100% light in order to believe it or live it in my body. And believing that you're 100% light, that you're all the good, and not even good, but you're just all of God, is it's the only way that you can only give God, that you can be all love to other people. Because like love and God and light, they're all the same in here, and me. And if I'm that, I'm just going to keep giving that. But otherwise, if I think, well, every time I go to help somebody, I'm giving them, the parts of me that are good and the parts of me that are bad. If I'm giving them some bad too, then I just might as well not help anybody. But you have to get back to, and we can talk about this, but the Garden of Eden, that's living from the place where you know that you are one with God. And where being one with God means being God. You can't be one with something that you aren't, When a husband and wife become one flesh, it's like you become the same entity. Not actually, but like your bodies are together and you're not separated. And what you do is you create another life. And that one's both of you, You can't take the me or the Charity out of our son Nomad. So if you're one with God, if you're enmeshed, if you're complete, then you're complete. And then you're in him and then you are him. And you can't be one with God but not God. And that's what I think maybe is the easiest way for Christians to understand it. Because they would say, I'm one with God, but they aren't actually living like they are God. And if you are one with something, then you are it, And so, essentially, the Garden of Eden is the knowledge that you're one with God. It's being a child. It's a childlike mind. And again, it's weird, but you watch William Donahue, I don't know, on YouTube. He goes through and actually just smashes all the religious stuff and talks about what really is, in the stars, in metaphysics. He talks about what the perspective of the people who wrote the Bible would have been speaking on. He talks about ancient mythology and all this stuff. And people don't want to believe that it's woo-woo or that it was it very well may have been written by just a bunch of random people who kept manuscripts throughout, the Israelite timeline, and it all got compiled and it just kind of fit in perfectly, and then it was done. But once you find out that the entire thing that happens in our brain and body when we have inspiration is the same thing that happens in the sky, and it's the same thing that they wrote about, and all the details, the reason that Leviticus and Numbers and all these, boring scriptures have all these details, it's literally just talking about what's going on in your spinal column. And once you see everything lines up, you're like, oh shoot, well they weren't just talking about, how many goats to bring to the other side of the river or whatever. It's it's actual metaphysics. And so if it's not an event, at the very best, if you want to believe the Bible as a literal, statement of fact, truth, historical book, you have to believe that also, basically God forced reality to happen in such a way where when they wrote it down, it also told of the reality in our bodies. And that very well may be true. I like to think of it that way because then everything happens spiritually, metaphysically, mentally, and also in our bodies. But I don't need it to happen. If the actual events didn't happen, that doesn't break my reality, because my reality isn't built on the Bible. It's built on experience. It's built on the I am felt presence of God. And everything that, has been shown to me or revealed to me through my inner sense, through innocence, through meditation, through being quiet, being inward, through everything that Jesus said, enter within yourself. The kingdom of heaven is within you, you're God. You have to know that you're God. And so basically the only way you can prove that you're not God is by forcing yourself to look at sin, forcing yourself to look at evil, at all these things. Even the way that people are they see evil around the other side of the world, and they're like, I would never do that, but if I'm honest with myself, I still have those desires in me. So even if I'm not acting on them, that evil's still in me, and I still need to combat that evil as much as I can. And my whole life's about combating evil. All you have to do is return to the garden. All you have to do is enter back through the the ring of fire, or the angel with the messenger with the flaming sword with puts the ring around the garden so you can't get back in. What that actually is holiness, or holy fire, or being close to God. Essentially, as you walk back into being God, your flesh, your ego, your constraints, your darkness that you think is you has to burn up, has to come off. And so you can spend your whole life just being oh, poke the fire, and nope, I don't want to be in there. That burns off something that I think is me. And so for as long as you identify with darkness, you will never let yourself walk through the fire to just be pure light. Light can go through a fire, darkness can't, and so if you identify with your ego, your sin, your flesh nature, whatever they would say, with just sin more generally or darkness, then you're stuck outside of the garden. You can't be in the same place that God is, and you are forced to view things through good and evil and try and have more good and less evil. But if you come to a point of oneness of, I'm light, let me just hop over to the other side, and it's like, oh shoot, that felt like burning, that's also hell too. So just to, break open the whole thing. Hell is the ring of fire that surrounds the Garden of Eden. And you're in hell right now, or you're in heaven. And actually, in some senses, you're in both, because they're both states of being, states of mind. And if you live from heaven, in the clouds, whatever, from levity, from lightness, from God, then you're in heaven. And if you sink down to your base desires, focus on the worst things about you, you'll be in what? A pit of eternal fire, right? Not after you die. We basically identify, in the West, we identify, maybe other places too, but I only can speak about here. We identify death and the eternal sleep with the subconscious. So whatever we know is going on in the subconscious, whatever we sense, we basically project onto death and say it happens there. It probably does happen there because then we're maybe fully in the subconscious, but essentially, everything you'd be most scared about maybe happening after you die, it's happening in you now. The only, sins that you can burn alive for or whatever are things that are burning in you now. And the burning isn't a terrible thing. People are like, well, how could God create something where you just eternally suffer? He didn't. And he isn't even he, and we can talk about that too, but the I am felt presence of God that can exist in a man or a woman, that exists in everything that he made, the trees, the birds, the plants, everything, didn't create a place of eternal torture. What it is that for as long as we as humans think that we're cut off from God, then we're going to have to live in that cut off place, which feels like terrible, outer darkness. And then when you walk more towards the light, the things that you have identified with the darkness is going to have to burn off. And that's, fire. That's flesh. And when it says the devil and all his angels will be cast in the lake of fire, it's like, well, yeah, everything that's not actually real and God and not a part of, reality, truth, is just going to burn, fizzle out, be done. All the darkness that gets, cut off is just going to have to erupt into nothingness because it wasn't real in the first place. So it's perceived darkness. So everything you just have to think about in your mind, So all my sins are in the lake of fire, right? Because, and people always are like, well, Jesus died for our sins and there's nothing that we, could do to earn it or deserve it or whatever. It's not about earning. It's not about deserving. It's not about being good or evil. It's about, so this all gets to how you actually live life, what life's about. But basically you have to re-enter the garden. You have to, in your mind, just be a child, not know that you're naked, not know that you're separate, cut off. You have to put the fruit back on the tree of knowledge and good and evil and just be like, I just want the tree of life actually. I'll just eat that one. And I think that basically I want to make sure I answer all these things I've started. We talked about you are I am. You are God. Another thing to think about is basically to be I am. You say it already. You say I am this, I am that. Whatever you identify with that you are, you're putting your God energy, your essence, your ability to control the universe into effect by saying I am such. Because if God is if he says, they ask, what's your name? And he says, I am. Then it's like, well, everything you are, then you're using God. That's actually taking the Lord's name in vain, if you want to talk about that. But we can all do it because we're all God, and so we're all either living fully in him or in some ways outside of him. And it's totally up to us if we want to live in or outside of the fold, if we want to be shepherded or if we want to go make our own thing. That's why the whole idea of Babel or Babylon or evil civilization throughout history. First of all, if you want to talk about historical level, we should do that and get into it sometime. But I got less interested in history when I realized, it's just the same every single time. So you have Egypt, and then you have Assyria, and then you have Babylon, and then you have the Greeks, and then you have the Romans, and then you have the British, and then you have America. And it's just a civilization that took over the whole world at any one time. And we try and look at history and be like, these people were correct, or these people were right, or these people had these gods or these ways of thinking, and like we think it's kind of like they all added and um, you know, added to history, and like they invented these things or they came up with these ideas, and we try and look at kind of like what they were good at, what they were bad at, how we learned, how we grew each time. There's this illusion of growth or change, or that any of those civilizations thought any different than the rest of them did. If you lived in ancient Egypt, you lived probably the same life as you do in America. If you lived in Britain in the 1500s, you lived probably the same life that you would live in Assyria. And not the same life in terms of like, yeah, the tapestries would be different and the, whatever, all the stuff that doesn't matter, all the aesthetics. But I'm saying in terms of the lifestyle, the way that people are, if you're running from God, or if you're sure that you're cut off from Him, everybody that runs from God builds the same type of civilization. And what it is it's built on, and maybe certain ones are emphasized or other ones are, but it's just built on all these pillars of things that are false. You talk about like the 7 deadly sins, or demons, or urges, or desires, or wrong, all this stuff, lust and greed and envy. All that a civilization can be built on, if it's not God, is any of those things. And it doesn't matter if it's more of one or the other. Like, they're all equally bad, or they all can make for a bad society. So like if one becomes the main function of the society, like let's say greed, and you go to war because of greed, like, well, the money or the spoils that come back from war, maybe war is the engine, but then it feeds all the other ones. It feeds us being able to be like lustful and envious and have gluttony at home. So it doesn't matter which one you put into the main, like you put into play, the rest of them all feed off of it. And none of them really matter in general, because you can just reject them all and say no to them. And the easiest way to reject them is just to know that you're God, know that you're outside of them, know that none of them are you or are in you or are a part of you. And if you see something come up where you're like, man, I acted like one of those things was me, all you have to do is be like, well, I know it's not, so okay, go back to being a kid, throw it off, be a child, be God, let God be God. And your Father, we should talk about more specifics maybe in a different video, but like Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all that is Father, Mother, Child. You have an internal Father, Mother, and Child. And the Holy Spirit, or, we get way too into like the translations and all this stuff. God's word for Eve in the garden was Comforter, Helper, Ezer. God's word for it when Jesus said, I'm sending the Holy Spirit, I'm sending a Helper, Comforter, Ezer. Same word. That's what the Holy Spirit is. It's the mother. It's the Spirit of God that is female, which we're like, oh, it's all male, it has to be whatever. Or like, are you saying it's multi-gendered? Like, no, it's not Baphomet, it's not transgender or transhuman, it's not weird. It's, we see it in life. The same way that, so much of the Spirit is echoed in trees, in the breeze, in the air. I'm a father, my wife is a mother, and we had a child. God is just triune being, just family. And God is in you, and He, you are Him, He is you, or she, or it. That's why I have a hard time now even referring to the thing, because it's like, okay, did I build reality and create everything and sequence it all and whatever? Like people are like, well, you're not God. Were you here at the beginning? It's like, well, actually, yes, we all were. I don't remember it. I don't have notion of it, but I can see that I'm a part of what all this is. My fingerprints look a lot more like the rings of the tree than anything I've ever seen a human make. So if I'm not made with human hands, and actually nothing that's in base reality is made with human hands, then it makes me think that whatever did design all of this was as connected to me as it was connected to everything else. And I think that I'm the closest to, like of all of creation. I think most humans think like we're the pinnacle of creation. We're kind of God's best. Like He needs us here as gardeners and as caretakers and all that stuff. And it's true, but it's like we are the pinnacle of creation in the sense that we're the part of creation that can totally destroy it or totally make it work. But it's because we have the capacity for thought. We have the capacity to get stuck. We have the capacity to leave the garden. A tree can't really exit the garden. It can't start to believe it's evil and then start producing evil fruit and all this stuff. Like, we're the ones that we can do that. And so it means that we're given like the mind or the intelligence or the ability to operate like God and to be God. And I think that we just enter into this weird dilemma of confusion where you try and parse everything out and you try and make it like, essentially what people do is they work backwards. They live in Egypt or Babylon or America or Britain, whatever. It's all the same. They live in a certain set of being and like a system, and they try and justify the system. And then, a holy book comes into play, like the Bible, or, you could think of even religious books of other countries. As soon as you try and justify the religious book with the system, you enter this weird point of you're just making like, what's the best way to put it? Like corporate Christianity, kind of, or like it's almost like the, excuse me, how the Catholic Church was. You end up having like a religious system that's used by the state, and that's why I say all religion is false. It's just because it's not that deep. Like you can have a practice as to how you interface with God. It's basically like if you were a painter and you had a certain way you set out your art supplies. It doesn't mean you can't paint without setting out your art supplies that way. We're all God. We're all capable of being God and of getting back to existing in a state of eternity, purity, bliss, true humanity, in the Garden of Eden. And it doesn't really matter how we lay our lives out as long as we can get back to that thing. In fact, most of our lives are going to look different because we're all really different, There's at least 12 ways to be, maybe 13, I don't know, whatever. I'm just saying based off like your birth sign and all that too. We know everyone's different. So I think a lot of Christianity just prescribes the same thing for everybody and says, well, if you follow these laws and these rules, then you're good. But being good or being like okay or justified or whatever, from my life, most of it I've realized now, that just means being a good citizen, a good American. It doesn't being a good Christian also means being a good American. And America isn't God, it isn't heaven. It isn't even like producing that. How can those two things be true? If let me say it in a better way, but if the way that somebody interprets the Bible says that all you have to do is this, and this, and when I do those things, the end result of it is I'm a good American, that probably means I'm not a good Christian, because you can't be both serving God and serving this thing that's clearly not God. And so you kind of have conflated it. And what I feel like is that I'm not a Christian, I'm not an American, I'm not any of these things, because none of these things need to exist. The illusion is that any of this has to exist to get it right, to save the whole world. Like we're putting our faith and our hope and our dreams in these rocket ships blasting off to space, all these countries, all these ideas, all these ideologies, all these religions, and we're all like cheering for ours. Like mine's gonna win. It's in the lead. See, it's doing better. It's made more technology and more inventions and all this stuff. Like we all see it that way. We're just rooting for our boat, like our team. We're wanting to win the race. And none of them are getting there. None of them get there. They all, we get there from here, and that's it. So they can all explode in the sky. They can all fail. They all will fail. And part of God is like proving that every other thing that tries to be God is going to fail. Every collective idea we have to make this world work that's not inward, that's not actually living from this state, just fails. That's why you have, you probably have Armageddon every like 200 to 500 years. Once I realized too, like the book of Revelation, like it's a cycle, because it happened to John. He saw it. It was a revelation. Yes, we say like, oh, he saw it in the spirit or whatever. He may have also had the metaphysical read on it, but like I think he actually saw those events happen. The temple's destroyed. The whole world might have ended, like for what they knew of the world. Like I think the more we look into actual history, you see like everything gets melted, everything gets bombed, everything gets a deluge comes, or we have these stories of like Atlantis, and like we have lost civilizations everywhere. Every single civilization that's ever tried to stand up and be God just ends up not being God, being destroyed by the earth or the elements or the human's own doing, or whatever way you want to witness it, like, or view it. But it's just this cyclical destruction by the evil that, like the very evil that thought it was as good as God, ends up destroying itself, and then we like look in amazement at all the destruction. But it's not that amazing. It's like, okay, yeah, the big fireworks because you guys tried to build a big building as like a middle finger in the sky to God. So when it comes down, it's going to be a big explosion, Basically, I have this like notion that every time that we try and build anything that will work, that's not built from in here, unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain to build it. It's just like people will build something for like I said, 500 years, and they all labor in vain because nothing they built is actually going to be standing. The only society that's real is like the society or like the connection of the groups of people that are in God. And that doesn't mean we all have to like just be monks, but I think like the natural state of living like humans, like if you think about like deer as a species, and then you think about humans as a species, it's like, well, how should we actually live? And it's like, well, a lot of things don't need to exist. You know, if you start deleting banks and Starbucks and, you know, Dunn Brothers, I don't know, out here, Subway, if you start deleting a bunch of stuff, I had this thought one time where like if it was like a Sim City, if I just deleted everything back to just it's just a field, you know, all of our clothes, all of our tools, all of that stuff, could we still survive? And it's like, yeah, you'd have to like get back to being intelligent, like the intelligence of the earth. Like you'd have to know how to make fires, all of a sudden. And everyone would be like, oh, that would suck. You know, we'd eventually have to build like air conditioning, all this stuff. Like we just be building back up to try and get to plastic and cars and prefabs and all this stuff, like, and glue. We need all that because it makes our lives way easier and way better. And it's like, do I want life to be made easier to not be a human or to run from God or to run from this actual experience that, you know, maybe I chose to have or that God wants me to have or that I'm just a part of, I'm innately a part of. You can't tear me from the world that I'm living in. And so essentially not that much needs to exist. I think cities could be really cool, but like it has to be play. It has to be like we're all just kids on a sandbox trying to decide what game to play. You know, we're all just cheering for our boat to win the race. But none of them are better than God's boat, you know? None of them can pass a single fish that God created. He just knows how to make things that swim. So I'm just like, if the central intelligence of the universe is better than you at everything, and you have the ability to tap into the central intelligence of the universe, then you should just be doing that and just living from the central intelligence of the universe. And don't spend your time tapping into anything else or trying to actuate anything else. You know, like it's fake, it's false, it's not real, it's not going to come to anything. All your religion comes to nothing. All of your beliefs, all of your systems, all of what you try and build or hold on to, or like in a lot of ways, Christianity is also trying to just keep things the same. It's like keep things in line for the American government. It's basically trying to prove that if we're all are good enough people, then the system of America can survive. And the system of America can be good for everyone. If we expand it to everyone on the planet, you know, there's no more brown people starting wars with each other, and there's no more, you know, this or that or this belief system or this evil demonic religion. Like if we just eradicate everything that we don't understand and take over the whole world and give everybody DoorDash and pizza, you know, and like Target, then the whole world will be saved. You know, it's like if the whole world became America, it would suck because America sucks. Not because, you know, I mean, people are like, well, the founding fathers and all this stuff. It's like, if you build a country like on some true things, then those true things stay true, and those true things, you know, are the outgrowth of truth, or like the branch and the trees. You live under the leaves of the shade that the truth thing grew into, but everything you added onto it is not true and is not good for you, and is not, you know, you're living with that too. You're living with the outgrowth of every single thing that was added in that wasn't of God. And so trying to say, well, because these untrue things are tied to truth, that makes it all true. It's like, I don't think that there's a single civilization. I don't think humans are capable of creating a government that aligns with God, because government doesn't align with God. Government is control. You know, there's God wanted the Israelites, you know, to be on an even playing field, and they were like, no, give us a king. You know, so it would have been God, and then the king, and then the Israelites. And He wants us all to be kings, so we're all shoulder to shoulder with each other, and then all to be God, which is actually even above that, because you have to unrealize that you're God in order to even want a king. And like, we're all on the same level playing field. We're all humans. We're all good in that sense. I mean, if you go like good versus evil, then like just throw away them both. But we're all whole. We're all pure. We're all children. We're all in the fold. Get a little bit ahead of myself here, but basically we're all the same. We're all together, whether we want to believe it or not. And we are all God. Every human that you see is God. You know? Even the children, especially the children, because they're acting as God. Until one of us comes along and goes, oh, you think the whole world's just light and love and beauty and like you're connected to all of it? Actually, and then we put the same pain that happened to us onto them. And like all that we need to do is just let go of our pain, let go of our, that's where actual sin is. Sin is just reactions to pain. So it's like, let go of those false realities you took on, let go of that darkness, and just be at ease and just like be a child, you know? Remember your way back to being a child. Remember your way back to being close to God. And that's why when Jesus says like be in this world, not of it, he's like, well, don't like delete yourself and don't, you know, try and run away from, you mean you can, but like if you just run away from American civilization, or you like, you know, go into the woods somewhere, like you can do that, but God's just as capable of helping you live a really, you know, peaceful, abundant life within the system, because the truth is God's more real than the system. So he's going to make things happen, whatever's happening in the system, work in your benefit, in your favor, not as like you get a lucky star because you found the right religion to be. It's like, no, it's just if you understand reality, you understand life, like money is just energy, abundance is just energy, like everything is just energy. So if you're in the God energy, then you got everything you need, no matter what system they put in place. You know, even if you live in communist China, if you believe you're God and you're in God, then you have everything you need. And it's funny because I'm using communist China as like this terrible example. Like that's what I've been raised to do. I have no clue. Maybe it's fine over there. I know one thing. I know no matter how good or bad it is, and no matter whether China or America, like whichever one's better, they all pale in comparison to God. And we just like, I'm so frustrated with so many people, especially Christians, and it makes sense, like Christian nationalists. It's like it kind of is the same thing, because to be a modern American Christian, like you kind of can't pull those things away from each other. To be a modern Christian kind of requires you to be American, because the modern read on the Bible is a, you know, we could say like Western, but like it is that mindset, is a mindset from our empire, and it is a justification of our empire. And no empire is justified. God just wants us all clean as humans, you know. Nobody's above the law that's in our own heart. And people are like, you know, you can't do this or, you know, do that because there's laws and there's all this stuff. The laws are just whatever everybody agreed on. The actual laws are the ones that are in your heart, the ones that you feel. You know, when you know you did something wrong, you go return that thing that you stole. But some law could tell me to return something I stole, and I didn't actually steal it. You know, I don't feel wrong about it. They don't actually feel wronged. They're just saying, well, technically, based on this legality, whatever, you have to give this back, or you owe me this, or whatever, and quantifying it all. And like, it's all just like, that's all heresy. That's all hearsay. You know, that's all. It's not true. It's not correct. It's not right. It's not righteous. There's no standing underneath it. It's just, I mean, you can get into all this stuff. It's just like maritime law, and like, I don't know, maybe I'll end up doing a stream on all that, on trusts and on maritime law and on like basically the inner workings of every civilization and society that's ever been. But like, there's other people that have done a really good job at that, and like, you can go just find that stuff. And I'm inspired to know it, but I'm not inspired to talk about it. I don't care too much, because like, it's true, but it's not the most true. The most true is that you're God, and that life gets a lot better. The world gets a lot better the more of us realize that and take it in and actually believe it. But it's this weird, like I said, metaphysical understanding where it's like, if I try and convince somebody they're God, but they're determined to believe that they're not, the only justification they have for that is how sinful they are, and how sinful, you know, they're going to try and say I am, or somebody else is. And I'm not saying I'm God because I've never sinned, or I've never done something that made myself feel bad, made somebody else feel bad. I'm saying I'm God because I have access to the divine, you know, like completeness inside of me. And if I live from there, then as long as I'm living from there, I have full access, and I'm a full son. You know, you're a full daughter. I'm a full being that is complete. And nothing can, you know, nothing can separate you from the love of God. It's like nothing can stop you from getting back to being a child. I think that's what people need to hear. It's like the way you felt like when you were a kid, the way that you believed and saw the world, the way that you came into this reality wanting to be, the things you had to express, the things you were excited about, the things you cared about, the things you loved. You have full access to get right back to that. You have access to live from that, to be that, and be only that, and not have to be that along with all these other things. That's the truth. That's the message. That's the goal. That's the main thing anybody needs to hear. And that's why I was saying it's metaphysical, because the only way that you could disprove me is by proving sin, proving how bad things are. And so it's almost like I'm like, guys, stop everything, you know, stop it all. We don't need to fight each other. There don't need to be any wars or whatever, you know, like, it's not real. We were fighting each other for no reason. And then somebody just like picks up a gun and shoots somebody next to them, and it's like, see, sin's real. I just did it. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, you enacted the amount of reality that you saw that it was. But if what you have to actually realize, that's why I can't just do that externally. You have to do that internally. That's why like standing in front of a tank, like I guess it's a symbol. It reminds people that is true. But that's not going to stop the tank from running you over, or then from running over other people after that. The idea of it is true, and if it resonates with people and if it clicks, that could do something. But what I want to do is try to remove the burden, the pain, and the weight of sin from people's lives, so they realize that it's not actually them, that it's not reality, and that it's not the way to live, and not something that they have to stay in. And so, in a way, the really important thing in unburdening people, in helping them to live life, is like, and I said at the beginning, I felt like I've been like cut off from things. The only way for me to come back is to the only way for me to achieve internal coherence and to come back to life with other people was to find out this information, was to learn this stuff. And like I almost wish I didn't have to learn this stuff, or wish that it wasn't, it would have been easier to live. But there was nothing that was going to get me back to reality, back to light, back to sonship, back to being a child, unless I, was forced this far off the path, kind of thing, off my normal path, like what was set for me, off my fate, I think it's on each of us, especially like, artists are in some sense just people that are aware that they're children, their inner child hasn't died, they haven't grown up fully. There's adults living as, some part of you is still living as a child, even when you're at an adult age. And essentially the artist or the internal child, the person, feels that in some way, they were forced. So we talked about like the sun is beaming down light. Anything that stands in the way of that, any post, any reed, any pillar that stops you from getting all of the light, all of the love that you need, anything that adds darkness basically becomes your reality. You think there's this much light and the rest is black, is darkness, is being cut off. And the truth is it's all connection, but all these illusions, all these things that are standing in front of the sun, they're not real. There's a way outside of them and to view the sun again. But for as long as you believe that they're everything, that's all you're going to see. And so artists are somebody who have seen something as darkness, watched it turn back to light again, and are like, wait, that can happen. I know there's a way. I know there's a path back. And they may think it's only in that area. Honestly, they may only really have, part of the truth. But they see the light again, and they know that it's there, and they want other people to know that it's there too. And so if you've been hurt or broken or cut off, from light in such a way where when you came back, it was like a huge change and transformation, you have to share that light back with everyone. And I feel some sense of that's what happened to me in my childhood, was I was so cut off and so like surrounded by darkness that I had to get light back. And it's continued happening to me where I'm like, I just have to bust down all the darkness because I want to get back to full sun. I don't want to view life through any illusion, through any sin, through anything blocking me and God, through anything blocking me and sunshine, through anything blocking me in love. I just want to get fully back into it all. And so I think there's been times where it's weird, but even though it's felt dark in the sense that it's felt lonely, and it's felt like, how am I ever going to prove this to anyone or be in a relationship with anyone or show anyone? But the thing I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to, do with all that is like, how do I connect with anyone? Because they're not going to believe me. They're still going to think that that the illusion is real. Like they have evidence of it, and internal evidence and felt evidence. But art is just like showing the greater evidence of the thing that can combat that. Have you ever sat and talked with somebody who's just like, they're so sure that relationships always end badly, and they're so sure that their divorce couldn't have been avoided, and that, this person or that person has wronged them, and there's no way around that. There's no way to love them again or to like find peace or healing. But like, you've had a good relationship, and you're sitting there and like, I know what you're saying. I know that things get so bad, but I also know that there is a way around it. I know that love persists because like I've seen it, I've felt it. It's like, I want to go with you and like believe that's true, but like I genuinely can't, because that would mean I don't know what I know, and I do know what I know. And so like I feel like I'm sitting like that with everybody in my life right now, where it's like they're all trying to be like their unique pain, their unique way of, not knowing how to get close to God in whatever area. They're trying to prove it to me, prove that that's reality, that that's life, that that's the way that it actually is. That's a cold, hard truth. That's the way of the world. That's the whatever, all that stuff. And I'm just like, oh, but I know that there's a way through all of that, and no, it's actually true, and it's all illusion. And you're basically living your whole life on this repeated cycle of trying to balance that illusion or trying to get through it, but your subconscious pulls you back into it because you've adopted that sin as your reality, as your internal, the picture you've painted of the world inside that you're living from. Calls this thing just like a wall, calls it concrete, calls it something you could never get past, and it's not the truth of what it is. So like I just gotta call everybody else liars, and then I'm right, and how am I gonna prove that? I feel this thing where I know all this to be true to the point where I can't like deny it, and it all clicks in with every other truth that I've ever known and every real thing I've ever interacted with or seen. But at the same time, it's hard when somebody's like, well, this is my trauma felt reality that I think is true, and I'm like, the birds and the trees say otherwise, or whatever, like my proof is nature. My proof is, it is like coming back from my trauma too, and that's probably why I have to share the pain that I experienced and then share my way out of it. And I'm trying to learn how to do that, and I want to do it through like sound and music, but like I also feel like this deeper sense of purpose or urgency or whatever, because not only did I like find out that you can come back from like having your dad leave, and like still find love with other people after all your family members abandon you. I also kind of just kept going down the trail and found out that there's not a single dark thing in life that's actually real. There's not a single war that had to happen. There's not a single, sin that had to be committed or evil act that had to be done. Like, it all is based off of pain, which is just an illusion. It's all based off of what somebody felt cornered to. It's all based off of like animal instinct, like that fear, that drive, all that stuff, that insecurity. All of those things that aren't something you come to the planet with. Like, babies aren't insecure about their hair. Like, you're taught to be ashamed and cast off, and you're taught that all these blockages to getting love, but there's not actually a blockage to getting love. I think we all agree every baby should be loved completely, but then that means every 2-year-old should be loved completely, and every 5-year-old, and every 10-year-old, and every 15-year-old, and every 17-year-old, and every 18-year-old, and every 21-year-old, and every 30-year-old, and 35, and 45, and 48, 46, 49, every single age. Like, there's not a certain age where you stop loving people, or they then are forced to earn love. And everybody that's trying to get me to grow up or to like see the real world or step into reality, it's just like, guys, come on, that's not actual reality. There's not a certain age that a threshold that you cross, like, that then you have to try in order to earn love, and that you're not, worthy, or that you're cut off. Our society in America, as soon as you're 18 or as soon as you are of working age, you have to justify your existence through making a certain amount of money. And actually, like, you have to make, enough money for the U.S. government to let you make the money that you want to make. And, it's basically like, you get fun money, do what you want with it. We're not going to put any rules on you, but you do have to give us a certain amount so we can keep doing wars. And, like, I just don't like that deal. I'd rather not work, not eat, and not have anything than be a part of their, war machine. And I'm not at the point where I can justify and be like, oh, but I'm just a Christian and I'm doing everything to the best that I can. And I'm, I give to this and I do this. And, like, basically my goods outweigh my bads. And even though I'm a part of the worst thing that's happening in all of, the world, or maybe all of humanity ever, I'm a foot soldier for the pedophile baby eaters. But I also, I also give to charity. I also hand out soup on the weekends, whatever. Like, pretty much none of your good deeds can make up for the evil deeds that you're a part of. And the only way that you're not a part of it, that's scary for people to not be a part of the U.S., who live here, to not be a part of, like, the U.S. system, ecosystem. But you have to not be a part of it internally. You have to give it up in here first, in here too. But, like, I've just given it up. I don't feel like an American. I don't feel like a Christian. I don't feel like anything other than I know I'm God, and I know that I'm a child, and I know that everyone can get back to being that. And all the other stuff is, like, fake. Like, it's all really, you try and make it real, you try and make it, like, you try and sell it, you try and prove it, but it's all going to be, like I said, it's all these little boats in the water that, you know, they start and they're pedaling and they're trying to go fast, whatever, and it all gets beat by God's ship, by the real thing. Like, none of them actually make it across the finish line. They all sink under the weight of their own, you know, createdness. The fact that, like, a human created it and tried to make it be better than God's creation, it's never going to succeed. And so none of our civilizations are ever going to be better than whatever God put, like, psycho sense into us, that, like, we know how to live civilization. Like, we know how, it's like the truth that's in us. It's like the law that's written on our hearts, whatever way you want to say it. Like, I was talking with a friend about wolf packs and how, like, they move, and if you look at the heat map, they'll all, like, fill these different areas, but they don't interact, and they don't even get, like, onto the line of each other's property. They just can sense there's people, like, other wolves over there, but they have their thing going on, and they keep a healthy amount of distance. And I think humans have this innate sense, probably, of just, like, sharing and being kind or whatever, but also, like, keeping a certain amount of distance, like having your own land for your family and your whatever. Like, we know how to not get in each other's way. When people talk about, like, oh, it's overpopulated, the world's too much, all this stuff, in civilization, because civilization is weird and bad and stupid, yeah, the world can get overpopulated because there's bottlenecks and all these things, because, like, some land has to be factories and some land has to be farms and some land has to be shipping and all this stuff. If you gave everybody, I think it's like an acre of land on the entire planet, they'd all fit in Texas. So yeah, we can spread out and we can take the amount of space that we need and we can just build there and live there and do what we got to do, and that would be a perfect society. You know, everybody on the entire planet having all the space they need and all the ability to do whatever they want to. And if they all knew they were God and were just children, no war would exist, no fear, no disease, no illness, none of that. You know, and it would be heaven. That is heaven. We will get there at some point after, you know, all this, you know, funny business is worked out. It's kind of like if you put coffee, you know, grounds in a jar and then fill it with water and you shake it up. All we're seeing is all of the coffee grounds falling to the bottom, and then just water will be clear. And, like, you know, coffee grounds is all the sin, all the illusion, all the fake stuff. That, yeah, if you look at the glass, it's like, oh, it is hard to see through. It's murky. And so people are like, life is complicated and weird and stupid and it's hard. And it's like, no, it's actually just clear water. That's all the actual life stuff. All the other stuff is just coming to the bottom. And you can, like, purpose to just let this stuff settle to the bottom. But you have to be still, right? You have to be still. You have to be, like, entered within yourself. You have to be whole. You have to be God. To sit still, to let all the sediment sink to the bottom, to realize it's not you. And the lake of fire, or, like, all of the bad ideas being burned, is like that sediment in the bottom just being taken out of the cup. Once it's all there and all the water's here, you can separate them. And God even talks about this with, like, the wheat and the chaff being removed. So chaff's just got to be cut off, you know? We can all get to heaven. We just have to live as children and live from the point of being God internally. And we'll start to create that world that I just described, the good one, where we're all spread out and we're all even and we all have enough land and food and everything we need. But if we don't do that, then we live in fear. Then we think, oh, well, this thing's out to get me, and this thing's going to hurt me, and this thing's stupid, and this person wants my worst. You know, we start projecting things that aren't real. And then you get together in these tight groups, and then you try and build bigger tight groups. And then you build a city, but the only way to get everybody really to stay together is to have the same mindset. So then you make a religion. And then, you know, like, you just build and build and build. All of these, you know, what's the word? There's a really good word that I like. Artifices. All this artificialness. All this stuff that's not real, it doesn't need to exist. We start building all of it, and before you know, we have what we have now. And, like, we talk about progress and about inventions and about this and that. It's like, dog, none of that really, like, if you're inventing something from the childlike side of you for fun, for the good of humanity, whatever, that stuff's good. That's actual invention. That's creativity, you know? Everything else we're doing is just tinkering around on this dumb, big, broken car that's going to end in us all, you know, crashing. And you can make something work a little bit better or be a little bit more efficient or whatever. But, like, who cares if you put in better wheels on the car so you can drive faster to your own destruction? Like, that's all that we're doing if we're fixing or trying to save America. Or any society, any civilization. America's not uniquely bad. They're all bad. They're all artificial. They're all not real. It's not like I can't go out and, like, you know, knock on the walls and it's like, yep, there is actually an American president in the White House, and there is actually, you know, they built all this stuff to justify the idea of America. But I'm saying the idea isn't core base reality. It's not from God. God didn't hand down, you know, it's not from God even in here. Like, nobody who was God, who knew that they were God in and of themselves, this is their best attempt at living near or next to God, which is holiness. Holiness is just being close to God. So it's their best attempt at getting to where they think they need to be, but it's not all the way, you know. It's not clarity, it's not purity, it's not true. It's not the whole thing. It's not truthful. The only way that you live from that intelligence and that you create those things in the world is if you know you're God. If you are, you are I am. And through I am, you can do anything, and we all have the ability to, we talk about manifesting or projecting, like, you can create anything you want. You can live any life you want. I know that to be true. But what good is it if I create a life that is artificial, is not from the God sense in me? I only really want to have faith or belief or manifest the things that, like, the God side of me, the child, the inside, the innocence, the purity, whatever that wants from me, that's what I want to manifest and learn. And, whatever is evil, I want to, like, reject and let fall off of me. And it comes from living from your inner sense, from your childlike self. And through that nature, then you can be like, not like God, you are God as you're acting out his ways, his will, his words. Like, the way of God is the way of going back to that base, perfect, natural reality. And yeah, I think that for the most part, we need to all learn how to live from that, so that we're not just creating whatever we want to see, because I could manifest for myself a big house and a car and all this stuff, but the truth is it would come in conflict with my beliefs. If I manifested all these nice things, well, I would at some point have to come under, like, agreeing with money or agreeing with the American government or whatever. There would be all these checkpoints to get there. Do you actually want this? Because if you want this, that's going to take you doing this stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, but if you want to be a billionaire, you're going to have to screw a ton of people out of their life energy. People are like, oh, you're screwing us out of your money. That's what money is. Money is energy. And what's worse than screwing people out of their money is, because people even, like, who cares about money? Who cares about paper? They care about it because it's like, well, my time was invested in that. That's years of my life. They already screwed you out of the years of your life because you decided to trade years of your life for money. You decided to trade your body, your energy, your actual physical vitality, your life force for paper. And paper can burn. And, like, you did that. The way that billionaires screwed you is not in, taxing things or making it easier for them and harder for you, and, like, nothing having to do with the money. It was them tricking you into giving up your life force in the first place. They already got the thing from you that they want, which was that. Work on my idea, work at Amazon at a warehouse, whatever. Be a part of my thing, and I'll give you something worthwhile. There's nothing more worthwhile than living from your own energy and life force, and, like, the security of your own mind and heart, like, being conjoined and being, like, clear. Like, there's nothing better than that. So whatever you thought you were going to get wasn't worth it. And so, anyways, if you want to be a billionaire, though, and it doesn't matter about being a billionaire or a trillionaire or what, money can change. It's like the number doesn't matter. The only way you're going to be that type of a controlling person who actually has sway is if you go through all these checkpoints of, I'm willing to kill, I'm willing to steal, I'm willing to cheat, I'm willing to destroy. And you may not actually have somebody who's like, kill this person right now and then I'll give you $1 million. But basically you're willing to look the other way if somebody dies on your watch and it makes you more money. And if you get to high level business, all you're doing is just finding out more and more what you're willing to do to keep getting higher and higher. That's why it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. It's like, you've already, to be rich in any society at any time in all of history, you've already had to cut off the childlike version of yourself, because the childlike version of yourself doesn't take identity from being rich, They take identity from something else, and if it happens to make them wealthy, like if I'm a singer, I make a bunch of money singing, I'm a singer first. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a, this and that. I'm not some business executive. I'm something I would have actually wanted to be as a kid. The way you're off track is if your identity, the thing you tell people, like, oh, I do this, I'm this, is like something that if you would have heard as a kid, you'd been like, what? Like if you're some business exec with some like super long blah blah title, no kid wants to be that. No true human, no natural person, no God wants to be that. Only somebody who's wounded and scared and unaware of real reality and thinks it's all just darkness and illusion would even be interested in that. They fully bought into the illusion. Like people who are high up in the military, whatever, it's like you fully bought into the illusion of America. And I know people who have gone the military road and bought into the illusion. And now it's broken, and now like it broke them in a lot of ways because they gave their life, their body, their mind, their ability, all of their good years and their energy to something that doesn't exist, that isn't the realest thing. Like it's hard to come back from that. We all still can. We can all still be children. We can all still be pure. Like you are God. You are a child. You are your integrated self that either decided to come here or was an outgrowth of whatever else was going on here. But like you're here, you're part of the whole thing, and you're capable of being the consciousness that created all of it and living from that place. So like just do that, I could say it a bunch of different ways, and I'm trying to say, if you can only say it in one way, like people that just reference the Bible, then you don't actually understand it. If you can say it in all these ways, you're actually describing a thing, That's why Jesus spoke in parables. He was describing truths and reality. He wasn't like, well, we have Isaiah and he already said all this stuff, so I would refer you guys back to Isaiah. No, he like tells different stories every time because the story doesn't matter. The words don't matter. Quoting the Bible doesn't matter. Scripture doesn't matter. Nothing written down matters. Paper can burn. The only thing that matters is the truth in your heart, which is like actual cognizance of reality being felt and accepted and lived from and real. That's the only thing that gets you anywhere. Like everything else is if it can be destroyed, then it's not real. So like the Bible isn't holy. It's not even a complete book. It isn't a thing. It's a collection of things, and there's other pages and documents and scrolls and stuff that could have been a part of it, and that for some people they are. There's somebody calling their Bible holy on the other side of the world who has a different Bible than you. Not just talking translations, like talking full books, So which one, you just duke it out on whose is holier? Like, they're all created with human hands. Even if all these people were talking with God and whatever, they're just writing down their experiences of God, So your experiences of God are your Bible. That's your truth. That's your reality. Like, you can reference somebody else's because, it was here when you got here. You found it. But, like, it's not the most true thing because the only truth that's in it that you'll be able to use is whatever resonates with you. So that means whatever you've already felt and experienced. So like it's proof that the truth is already in you. Because if you can only pick up truth from what responds, then you have all the necessary pieces here. And that just reminds you of it. Like that just references it, but it's all here first. Like if I was on a mountain by myself, no pen or paper, no ability to write, nothing, no way to read, no Bible, no nothing, like nothing. No religion, no system of being, like all this stuff. I'm still just as connected to nature, just as connected to God, just as at home in the universe, and have just as much ability to be me and who I am supposed to be as anybody. And so if you can take it away and it doesn't actually change your experience, then it doesn't need to be there in the first place. So I don't think the Bible needs to exist, or Christianity, or their idea of God, or America, or any of this. And it's not just like I want to watch it all burn and see there's just this mindset, I guess, about Gen Z or about whatever. It's like that, or like the joke where we're just like nothing's going on and we're so crazy and so like starved for our attentions to be focused on something. We just want to watch it burn so we can watch like the embers be really bright, and then it'll be like mesmerized by it. I'm not mesmerized by violence or by things burning. Like I hate that. I don't really want to see it. I would love like a really slow, peaceful descent into just not using stuff that's crap and that's broken, like just leaving behind what doesn't need to be there, and by only actually building my reality on what exists, what's real, what's true to me. Like I don't want to buy a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of Amazon crap. Like I don't want to buy things that weren't made with love, weren't made by love. Love in me is going to make certain things, films and music and movies and clothes and all this stuff. But part of why I haven't been able to make a lot of that is like, if I don't know how to do it in love, if the only way I know how to get it done is through violence, which is, subjecting other people to my will and through forcing them, even if it's through money, like through coercion, like I don't want to make anything with anybody that doesn't actually want to make it like in here. If it's not coming out of them in here, like for me, I can sing and I can come up with a lot of ideas, and I can ideate, I can write, I can sing. And I can put my emotion into it, and I can adjust. Like I can help. I can direct somebody into more of that emotion or less. I need somebody who like can play music and like who loves to do that and who like has stuff to say, on the guitar or on a piano or whatever. With AI music, I don't care. Like I need somebody who something in here is coming out of them, and I want what's in here coming out of them to match what's in here coming out of me, and like to sync up. I don't really want a bunch of money so I can just pay somebody to like fake that something's coming from in here. You know, like I want the pure connection and the true connection, like the truth, the reality coming out of them to match the reality coming out of me, not artifice. You know, I think that's so many artists have learned this. Like, you get the best studio, you get the best gear, all this stuff. It doesn't make it any better. The best you can get is other people resonating with what's coming out of here. That's what will resonate with an audience, with a crowd. All the fluff is just fluff. It might work for a little while, but it's not the truth. It's not going to change anything. Even if you get, that's the other thing. I was watching this thing on Lil Yachty the other day. Dude, he's in this huge stadium, you know, walking out, just having the time of his life, having fun. That looks amazing to me. I'd love to live in that reality. I'd love to do that. But like, if everything he says or sings about, whatever, like, this is the real, you know, if you have not love, then it's just a clanging gong. Like, do I think he really, in a deep part of him, had to talk about like boats on the ocean and like little birds and whatever? Like, do I think that's like a deep thing that's coming out of him that's going to resonate with anyone? It's like, no, it just is a jingle. So you got all these people out, paid all this money. You know, I'm sure people like missed like birthday parties and truth. I'm sure there are people there celebrating, but like people missed real life or adjusted real life or whatever, paid their hard-earned money. Like, you know, they got videographers and lights. Like, people made a big, huge thing about this thing. And if nothing he says is really coming from here, and it's not resonating with anybody in the audience, then no exchange happened. Nothing actually happened. It's just the look of something happened. Excuse me. I always talk way faster than I think I'm going to on this. But no exchange actually happened. No life happened. Nothing like was committed to. Like, no change happened. No, it's all just a clanging cymbal. It's like, it's all just whatever. It's not truthful reality. So yeah, back to whatever I was saying, that I want something coming out of me to resonate with something coming out of somebody else, and for us to piece that resonance into sound and then just release it and let other people feel that too. And I think for me, I don't want to coerce anyone into helping me do this. I don't want to, you know, like kids on the playground. You know, when you ask a bunch of kids, like, oh, do you guys want to play tag? And it's like, they're like, well, I could be convinced or whatever. Like, you kind of have to like bribe them or barter with them, or if it's like, okay, you know what? If you guys don't want to play, then just like, screw you, do something else, do what you want to do. I want everybody that wants to actually play with me to play my game, because it doesn't feel fun to force people to play a game with you. You know, have you ever had your parents like, well, just play their game first and then whatever. And it's like, as soon as somebody's forced to play a game, it's low effort, it's low intrigue, it's low fun. Sometimes, you know, they get on board eventually because they like actually do have fun, but I don't want to force anybody to resonate with me. I don't want to force anybody to create with me. I want what's actually coming out of people to meet what's actually coming out of me. And I think that's what's been so scary and so lonely and so like ununifying, you know, with me to any other person or idea lately. It's just like, man, what's actually coming out of me seems to like be in bitter, stark contrast to what's actually coming out of everybody else. But I just rely on the hunch that what's coming out of them is not what's actually in them. It's a result of their fear. It's a result of their panic, their stress, you know, the things that are blocking the light for them. Like, they're looking at me through like this, you know, and, you know, I'm sort of seeing their eyes behind it, but I'm like a lot's blocked. And I'm just wanting to be like a pure, open vessel of just like, nope, this is actually just me. No faking it. You know, I didn't use notes. I didn't prepare for this. I didn't think through it all. I actually, before I got on, I was like, I don't really think this is a good day to stream or a good time to stream. And I don't really know if I have what I want to say. And, you know, like, I didn't reference my notes. Like, none of this is fake or artificial or like, I'm not trying to prove anything or show anything that's not just exactly where I'm at. So, yeah, anyways, if this whole like practice helps me get to some internal coherence, then that's a worthwhile thing for me. And I know what I'm saying is true, so I'm not trying to like convince anybody, but I'm more than happy to. I don't like debate in terms of like it's not that fun for me to. I used to really like debate, but it's because I thought certain ideas needed to win. And now that I know that it's just truth beats out every idea, it kind of becomes boring, because truth is just a thing to like excavate and find, and it's found in everything, and it ties to every other true thing. And so once you have some of it, you have all of it, and it really comes down to like your discernment, your internal sense, being able to sense what's true and align to it, and then you find out later mentally why that thing was true. So it takes the fun out of debate and the fun out of fighting, you know, like there's nothing to win. But I do want to explain and to have conversations and communication with people who either don't see it my way or who just need the truth, who don't see what I'm saying. You know, if you heard all of this and none of it made sense to you, then like, congratulations, brother, you need all of the truth. And like, I'd love to share enough of it with you that you can like start to come into some of this. But, excuse me, really losing my voice here. Probably means I should be done. Yeah. I want to. I'm an older brother, you know, like had to explain things, had to catch people up, had to, you know, had to teach, even though that's not like a thing that I necessarily, you know, I don't enjoy doing it. It feels like something I have to do, like extra, but I want people to be at where I'm at, you know, I want them to learn, so nobody else is teaching, then I guess I'll teach, you know, but I'd rather just talk and communicate and hope that people resonate with this. I know that people already are on this idea, on this feeling, like obviously the truth is in all of us and we're all God and we're all children, so we all have some sense of it, but we need to like be open to this so that that sense of it can expand to everybody. And I don't know how like oneness and community and like just being in a commune and like, you know, eating from a garden and like living naturally and being, you know, peaceful and loving. I don't know how all that got villainized. I guess America did a really good job painting all that as just like hippie woo-woo bullshit. Like basically they're faking it. They're actually violent and, you know, evil people at heart, and they're just projecting that nice illusion to try and get you to come in so they can take from you. That may have actually happened, but, you know, I think that most of this journey, for me, a lot of it has looked like finding out why I rejected just being a child, just being connected with people, just being, you know, nice. It's like you have to reject those things if you want to be a part of the American thing. Part of what's going on in the world right now, like to be a part of, like, you know, think about it more metaphysically, but like Babylon, like you have to get all that nice stuff like cut out right away. You got to be grown up. You got to like, everyone's trying to get you to grow. Man, ouch. Everybody's trying to get you to grow the fuck up, to like, you know, embrace this reality that they're trying to shove down your throats and prove to you is there. And usually it's just like the weight of the world. They want you to feel it. They want you to, because they feel it, and they want us, you know, they want more backs that it can be all held on. And so like, how come you're just playing, you know? How come you're just whatever? Like, you're not a slave? Like, why don't put your shackles back on? Like, what are you doing? This is the way that things are and have to be. And it's like, no, they're not. But me being free and unbound by religion or shame or guilt or burden, or there's a certain way I gotta be or thing I gotta be, or, you know, a certain amount of money I have to make to be a good person, I'm unbounded by that, and I don't believe it, and so it's not true to me. And I think that offends people that that's true too, because they're living their life, they're trading their energy and their life force for nothing. Wow, okay, I'm really gonna have to get off soon because it's just rough. They're trading their life force for nothing, and I refuse to be a part of it. But it makes me sad that people stay a part of it. So see me being free, see how much fun I'm having, and just know that there's better out there for you, for what you actually created to be, you know, what you actually came into this reality as. That's all you ever need to be. Just become a child, be like God. Know that in the same way that sunlight, if you just go into an open field, sunlight's all that hits you. You know, there's nothing that actually blocks your view. There's nothing that actually blocks your nourishment or your ability to perceive love. And yeah, I just want my life to prove that. So with that, I'm going to end stream. I love you guys. Bye.